Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jay Davis Show. I'm excited to have Brandon Harvath with us today. He is the president and CEO of Christian Care Ministry. We're super excited to talk to him. Welcome to the show, Brandon.
Hey, Jay, thanks for having me today. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Do you want to start by giving the audience a little bit of your bio and background?
Sure. Well, I've been here at Christian Care Ministry for the last couple of years and have the extreme privilege and honor of serving as president and CEO. Before that, I was in a totally different space. So I was leading a hospital system, and that was actually through the COVID pandemic. So if you want to talk about some more stories today, Jay, we can get to that. Oh, man, what a time, when you think back on your life and say, or maybe you think forward about your goals you might have. I never thought about, leading a hospital system in a global pandemic, but there you go. For that, about a decade in health insurance and with some of the largest, say Fortune 100s in the country, and had the opportunity there to lead international operations as well in healthcare. So, but I grew up in financial services. That was my background professionally. Degree in finance, and started off in the banking world at MBNA and Bank of America for almost a decade. So, yeah, that's my professional background.
Love it. There's not many things in our lifetime, I would say, that I think are so definitively before and after, like COVID.
Oh my God.
There's
Yeah,
9/11 was definitely that way. I feel
absolutely.
like COVID's even more. I mean, it was just so long and drawn out that yeah, it's kind of two different worlds.
Yeah, we're still counting, and I don't know that two incredibly different events, and for very different reasons, and yet, man, we're still trying to measure the fallout from the COVID pandemic. I mean, every single day, from mental health to physical health, all the way through to just the core trust that we as Americans have, right, foundationally, culturally, in some of the systems of our government, right? And
Yeah.
whether it's the FDA, CDC, you name it. I think sort of the foundations of where we've been as a country have proverbially been shaken.
Yeah. No, it's so true. Well, can you tell us, for those people who don't know about Christian Care Ministry, can you tell more about what it is you guys do, and then some of the things you do as president and CEO?
Yeah, would love to. So Christian Care Ministry has been in ministry now for 30 years. So actually, we just celebrated our 30th birthday. So how about that? So we're having fun with that this year. But we're actually a 501c3 nonprofit association of churches. So you can think of us as a large church group. We have over 7,000 churches that are part of our association of churches, and we serve hundreds of thousands of members around the country in all 50 states. Our main ministry that we've had for the past 3 decades has been MediShare. And so a lot of folks probably know us, by that brand name, if you will, right? MediShare. But
Yeah.
MediShare is a ministry program of Christian Care Ministry. We do a lot of other things too. We have a wonderful program called Manna, where we help folks who are in income loss situations. 65 plus, we help seniors in various areas. And we do some other ministries, like ministering specifically to pastors and churches through events like Thrive and Cultivate, a mental health conference for pastors, and all kinds of things like that. So, yeah, we sort of have a wide area of ministry that we do, but most folks probably know us by MediShare.
That's awesome. What do you feel like has personally shifted for you? Maybe not even personally, but like professionally, personally, like in your jobs for you, what has shifted because of COVID? Are there some lessons that you've learned or things that you now focus more on since the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, Jay, probably a little bit of everything, right? In life,
Yeah.
some of the things you held dear, or maybe just culturally normal in life. I mean, everyone has had some conversation around remote work, okay, at some point in time over the last several years. If you weren't willing to have that conversation, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, you have no choice now, right, as a leader. And so even just thinking
Yeah.
about the nature of work, I think this has brought a whole new lens to the idea of the gig economy, right? As you think about folks that are looking at income and looking at work and even the concept of work-life balance through a whole new lens in life, right? And it's not even that simple anymore to just say work-life balance. And so, I think fundamentally how we've just viewed life and culture around us has been, totally different. It's impacted us as a ministry and how we think about meeting the needs, of those around us and those that we serve on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, for me, I would even say I find myself, wearing jeans a little more often to the office. I mean, just, simple little things like that to
Yeah.
just have that a dose of humanity and just reality in life.
Yeah, it's amazing how I feel like the work outfit, like the kind of standard work outfit for men and women has totally shifted.
Completely
It's
changed.
very different.
Yeah, I mean, how many times did you see the half outfit on the first Zoom calls, right? When COVID first,
Yeah.
people are getting used to it. And they've got the nice top, and every once in a while you slip and see the sweatpants, things like that. But it's true. We've kind of gotten past that. The dog or the cat on occasion in the background, that was totally taboo, right? 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, I
Yeah.
mean, we're humans. Let's act like we are just as we are, normal fallen creatures right here uh,
Yeah.
in God's creation. So,
Yeah, it's I actually think that's one of the I mean, it's a horror you never want to go through a pandemic, but I do think that that is one of the benefits that we've had is just a realization of like, hey, I don't know where that taboo came from. I think
right.
a lot of it's more corporate culture. But yeah, I love talking to vendors and they're like, "Hey, my kid is, needs something real quick. Like, I'll be right back." And it's like, yeah, that's fine. Or your dog runs through. It's like it's not like you said, we're human beings,
Yeah.
and I think that's a really positive thing that's come out of it is more of this conversation. As a leader, how are you approaching hybrid work or remote work? What do you think of the pros and cons, some of the challenges? I think exactly as you said, we didn't talk about it like we do now
Right. Yeah.
5 years ago. It wasn't the conversation. But how are you approaching it as a leader?
Well, as a ministry, right, and as a person of faith, right, as a Christian, one of the things that I've just tried to remind myself is that God uses technology for His glory all the time. Okay, so whether you are a church, you're in a ministry, if you're in the secular workforce and any other job, doesn't really matter. And I go back and I look at examples like this, Jay. The gospel would not have traveled as fast in the first few centuries without the technology of the Roman roads, okay, that were built at
Yeah,
the time that allowed for its travel. The Bible's publication wouldn't have, had over 5 billion copies printed today without the Gutenberg press, okay, centuries ago. And so when I look at technology like that, the humbling aspect of just remembering that used for God's glory and in the right way, all of these tools can be incredibly powerful and helpful. So whether it's, Zoom calls, working remote, whether it's AI or whatever comes next, I think through the proper lens under the lordship of Jesus Christ as a Christian, we can not have fear of those things and really think powerfully about how to leverage them for the right purposes. And in our case, it's for the gospel.
yeah, that's amazing. I love that approach. How do you find, or are there things that you're doing to help people have kind of that connection? Are you guys fully remote? Are you hybrid? What's kind of your setup, and
Yeah, so
how
I,
do
I
you
should
keep
have
that connection?
I should have answered the question. So we
No, no, you're
actually
great.
embrace a hybrid environment, right? And so we
Yeah,
like that hybrid version of yes, it's perfectly fine to have that flexibility of some time remotely, right, working at home or in your remote office, whatever the case may be. But then the 2 or 3 days a week, we want you in the office if you're within a certain radius of the office. And part of that is just the reminder that man, as humans, we were built for fellowship with one another, right? We were created by by our Creator, by God, with a divine purpose, right? And an ability to communicate with each other, right? And it's really hard without being nose to nose, toes to toes, as some people have told me, right? To really get that kind of synergy out of relationship. Can you supplement it with technology? Can we do all of those things? 100% yes, right? Praise the Lord for phones, right? For connections like this. But man, if you completely eliminate that human element, I think organizations, ministries, companies are just going to miss out on a really powerful component of how humans interact at their core.
yeah. I think that's the balance I've tried to find. we're very lucky in that we live in a place in Utah where we're very close to each other, and so we don't have some of the challenges. And I understand those challenges. I understand why
Yeah,
people don't want to be commuting for 4 hours a day. It
right.
takes a lot of time away from family, and our average commute here is is like 15, 20 minutes, and so it's
Yeah,
really nice. It's like, hey, we can be in the office. But I also love the concept, and I agree with you, and that's something we've tried to think about. Is there is a portion of our work that I think you want that collaboration, you want that interacting, like you said, nose to nose and toes to toes. And it's hard to do that. One of the struggles I had during the pandemic when we were doing more remote was every little 5 minute conversation turned into an hour Zoom call.
that's right.
And so you couldn't see someone in the hall and say, "Hey, I want to pick your brain. Let's whiteboard for 3 minutes, 5 minutes." Okay, cool. You go do that. I'll do this. And so everything turned into like this kind of big conversation. And one of my favorite principles is the Parkinson principle, which is any task will fill the time you give it. And so if you say, hey, we have a 30-minute call, you'll fill the 30-minute call.
It's
Like you
got to be
never have
30.
like 6 minutes in, you're like, okay, see ya, we're good.
Right,
And
right.
so, but it's trying to find that balance, and then also the balance of I think it's Paul Graham wrote a great blog post about, there's a portion of our work that you need to get into that flow and you need to kind of be alone. And so I think I really love the model you said of like having some time where it's like go deep, get in flow, have that time to get that kind of work done, and then have some other time where it's more collaborative.
Yeah. No, we try to be intentional about the time when we are together and make it well worth the time, right? So, those days, and, so every Wednesday here at our ministry, we have an all hands meeting. It's our weekly chapel service. And that is a particular day where you're expected to be here, right? And we want to engage with you. And so we create some infrastructure and culture around it, right? So that there is still some thoughtfulness and it's not just random, right? But there are, exactly as you said, plenty of tasks, right, that we can easily accomplish at home, off hours, right, at our convenience. I think that fundamental model even of, that 40-day work week, 8 to 5, Monday to Friday, is in so many ways, in some sense, a dinosaur, right? And it's helpful for organizations to think
Yeah.
creatively outside of that box.
Yeah, it's I think that's something that people are thinking about. And like you said, so much of this technology I think is a blessing uh, from God and from a creator who wants us to live good lives and to be
Yeah,
happy. And so, yeah, I think it's a good reminder for every leader of being more intentional. I love that you said that.
yeah,
How do you approach one thing I always love talking to leaders from nonprofits is you are a nonprofit, but you're still a business.
yeah.
You're just a nonprofit business. How do you approach that? And maybe what are some of the challenges of leading something that sometimes people maybe forget is still a business?
Right.
It's just not driven by profit.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Jay, it's certainly a question organizations wrestle with. I've come to terms with it in so many ways, just on a super personal level, right? The metrics are different, but the excellence of the work and the demands and how you want to achieve your mission and vision should not change. If anything, nonprofits have a demand on them of a much higher calling, right? In so many different ways. And so for me, it comes down to making sure the measurements are right, right? How we think about, and I just believe this, at my core, what gets measured gets attended to, right? And as they say, what gets attended to gets done in organizations. And so I start by making sure folks understand what my definition of leadership is, if I could, put it that way. And for me, very simply put, Jay, that starts with pointing people closer to Jesus Christ. So when I leave people, right, whether it's one-on-ones, whether it's conversations like this, whether it's in the hallway, whether it's in our weekly chapel services, whatever the case may be, I want to be able to walk away from that and say, I pointed that individual closer to Jesus Christ. Now, if I'm not accomplishing that, any measure, right, or metric that's financial, quantitative, or otherwise is kind of out the window, right? We haven't achieved our ultimate, mission and vision as an organization. So I look at it as just a much more complex problem. I think it deserves, that kind of thoughtfulness and that kind of deep, not only philosophical but spiritual analysis and thoughtfulness when organizations create their metrics and targets and goals. A lot of nonprofits, can get off track when, they just look at the bottom line and they get stuck in that rut, acting like they're a for-profit organization. And before you know it, you end up with issues like mission drift, right? You end up working on things that have nothing to do with why that organization was called to exist, to begin with.
I actually think that's something that a lot of for-profit businesses could learn from and struggle with as well. It's very easy to all of a sudden find yourself, going against your strategies. My dad actually has a saying where he says, if someone shows up tomorrow in your business and says, "Here's $1 billion, I'll give it to you if you change your strategy," you never had a strategy to begin with, because you're just chasing money. And I think it's just as crucial. Like you said, I think it actually is a huge benefit for nonprofits of, hey, we really can focus on this mission. But yeah, the profit, I think, kind of almost comes actually as a result of focusing on that mission. So
Yeah,
I think that's a
I have a
great reminder.
good colleague. I used to say, from time to time, no margin, no mission, right? If you've ever heard that phrase
Yeah,
before. And so, it's not that you want to ignore those critical metrics that help demonstrate the financial or performance health of an organization. But what they would often remind me of is, yeah, Brandon, you got that backwards. No mission, no margin. And when you've got the
yeah,
mission right, and you're clear on that mission, and the organization is geared around that mission and fully committed to that mission deeply, right, in its soul, right, in its culture, then the margin comes, right, and then
yeah,
even as your dad put it, right, it's clear that there is a mission and a vision driving that organization.
yeah. What surprising lesson? I mean, it sounds like you've shifted from more non or more profit for profit businesses and shifted. What are some of the unexpected lessons you've learned working in a nonprofit?
Oh man. Well, it might be tempting, right? I would say I don't know that I walked in with this assumption, Jay, but it might be tempting to think that somehow, nonprofit land is maybe easier than for-profit
Yeah,
land, right? And that may have been a point of naivety on my end. That hey, actually, and it is true, nonprofit in its essence is very freeing because, to your point earlier, it allows you to really focus deeply on that mission and vision as an organization. I would
yeah,
actually argue this has been the most intellectually challenging role that I've had the opportunity to serve in, and that to me has just made all the difference. And I mean that in a very good way, right? So I've worked in some large Fortune 100 for-profit organizations, but if you've got listeners or folks out there who have ever thought about, well, maybe I should go work on something more missional, right, or in nonprofit land, but wouldn't be as challenging. Man, I got news for you. I found it to be 10 times the opposite, right? The other way
yeah.
around, and in a very, very good way. So not only are you focused on solving problems, but you're doing it for a powerful purpose, right? A very deeply meaningful purpose in so many different ways. So for me, that was probably, again, maybe a little bit of naivety, but I would say I just found it to be so much more challenging in a good, encouraging way than I ever would have anticipated.
That's awesome. And I think that's really great point. It's I think that's some of the challenges. Like you still have to provide value and be a business, but you're doing it for this much bigger goal. What are you guys working on that you're excited about? Any
Yeah.
new initiatives or innovation that you're excited to share with people?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of folks know us by MetaShare, but let me maybe back up and tell you a little bit about why we do what we do, and
Yeah,
then hopefully that'll give you a, bird's eye view to the platform that we're creating, if you will, for the future. And so, if you go all the way back to the early church, okay, so this is Acts 2:42 in particular, you see some examples of where, in that early church model, believers came together and they had all things in common. They shared all things in common and they took care of one another, right? So this is the first and the second commandment, right? The greatest if you will, the golden rule, right? Love God and love your neighbor. Okay. And that's exactly what the early church model was baked on. Now, if you fast forward a bit, and there are other commands in scripture where we see examples, like in Galatians 6, where it says very specifically, we should bear one another's burdens. Okay. If you fast forward in Acts 6, historically, there's this little excerpt there at the beginning of Acts 6, the first 7 verses, that tell us a story of a problem that had begun to creep into the early church. And we read the story about the widows. And it goes like this. There was a group of Hellenists, and then you had the Jewish widows that were there in Jerusalem. And the Hellenists were the outsiders, right, if you will, the foreigners in the land. And they were being neglected in that daily distribution. Okay, so clearly the church was sharing things. They had all things in common. That was wonderful. But it wasn't happening equally. It wasn't happening equitably. You could argue it was the first little bite of racism and even denominationalism coming into the church. Not good. And the problem statement was very clear. Right there in Acts 6, you can read that as a result, the preaching of the word, the ministry of prayer was being neglected. Okay, not good. And so the church wasn't growing as it should have been. It wasn't loving each other as it should have been. And so the apostles got together and said, you know what? It's important that we fix this problem. Let's appoint people with 3 qualifications who are full of the Spirit, full of wisdom, and of good reputation that can be responsible for connecting needs in this community to the resources. Okay. So Jay, when they implemented that, we see in verse 7 very specifically that as a result, the church grew and it flourished and it thrived. And so using that model of saying the church has to be about deacons who connect needs with resources, or else it's not going to thrive. If we sit back and we let people like pastors, like leaders of nonprofits or other groups kind of just deal with all of the problems in the church, it's never going to thrive. So we believe and we look at ourselves as a 21st century deacon ministry. I mean, Jay, our literal job is to connect needs with resources. And so we're doing that deeply in the healthcare field for sure. But we're asking the question to say, okay, well, where are the other needs and sufferings that the world needs help connecting to resources? Okay, so we partner with them, and I'll give you one example just to get your brain thinking. We support and love a nonprofit partner called Global Orphan Project. Okay, amazing organization, and this is what they do, similar to the MediShare platform, right? Similar to how we connect needs with resources in healthcare. They take those needs that orphans, that kids in the foster system have, and they connect it to a state agency and then to the local church. So the local church can identify that need and go show up at grandmom's door, at dad's door, at mom's door, wherever, with the need being met so the kid can stay in their home and with their family and not be subjected to this foster system. We look at it and we say, man, I don't know if you know this, there are actually more churches in the U.S. than there are kids in the foster system. And so when you make that connection and you say, man, the church has a huge opportunity here to be the deacons of the 21st century, to connect needs with resources in more powerful ways than we have ever considered before. So that's what we're about here at CCN. That's what we talk about every day. Those are the areas that we focus on. Obviously, we serve very deeply in the space of healthcare. Why? Because it's a multi-billion dollar problem, not only for you and I, for the church at large, and I would argue for every American. It's an expensive problem.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. That's a great reminder. I mean, I actually was talking to a friend who runs it actually is a business called Dollar Donation Club. But the whole idea is just everyone donating $1 a month, and just the power of, you get enough people donating a single dollar, and their goal is to get to the point where they can donate $1 billion a month. Or about $1 billion a year, and it's true. You split it up into those small goals. You say if every church could take one foster kid,
yeah,
it's a pretty incredible thing that we could do. So that's awesome. Well, how, if anyone is interested in working with you guys, in helping, contributing, what's kind of the best ways for people to get involved, for people to follow what you're doing, and maybe have an impact or contribute?
Yeah. Well, Jay, let me give you a few examples and say we have a wonderful program called Extra Blessings. Okay. So if you want to
Okay.
contribute and frankly just donate to Extra Blessings, it's a powerful way to help families in need who have medical bills that obviously exceed their capacity and capability. And that's exactly where we're trying to fill the gap in connecting those needs to resources. And so Extra Blessings is a great, place to donate, and that helps go directly to meeting the needs of these medical bills for families. If you want to even look at some of the other ministry opportunities that we have through Student Leadership University, if you're familiar with Dr. Jay Strack's wonderful ministry that they have in training up young leaders for Christ and in a leadership program, run wonderful way to get involved and just participate. Or if you need a solution around healthcare yourself, and this aligns with your values and you want to check us out, you can certainly go to mychristiancare.org or metashare.com and check out all of our various programs. We've got a wonderful group for those over 65, and obviously Metashare for families and individuals, and a number of other programs that your listeners might find interesting.
That's amazing. Where is it? Extrablessings.org,
Yeah,
or
it's
where,
actually
where
right
can people
through
go?
the mychristiancare.org website, and you'll find
Oh,
extra.
great.
Yeah, yeah.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing some of your experience and wisdom with us. We really appreciate it.
Jay, thanks for having me today.
Yeah. Thank you.